In this corner, the original 1989 Batman by Toy Biz. In this corner, the 1990 Crime Attack Batman from Kenner's Dark Knight collection. And in this corner, the 2013 DC Comics Multiverse Batman by Mattel. Thanks to the upcoming Flash movie, a whole new generation of Michael Keaton Batman figures and vehicles are hitting toy store shelves. But which classic Keaton figure is the best bang for your Bat credit card? Place your bets, it's time for a throwback style versus. Welcome to 5 points of articulation, where I review action figures and then articulate 5 points to help you decide if you want to add that figure to your collection. The 5 points I discuss are packaging, presentation, poseability, playability, and price. I'm Jason, and if you enjoy my content, please like, share, subscribe, do all the YouTube rigmarole. Starting with the packaging, and there are some significant differences between the three. The first one out of the gate is the 1989 figure by Toy Biz. It features some dynamic artwork instead of actual photos of the movie, but the film's title is very prominent. He's got a bat rope and some stars that are suspiciously similar to the Superpowers collection. Interestingly enough, this would go on to inspire the card art for Toy Biz's earliest Marvel figures, itself featuring the stars, and those cards became the model for the retro cards that Hasbro makes even now. Flipping around, you'll notice a couple of interesting things. One, this is just Superpowers Batman painted black. Two, his cape is more transparent than Warner Brothers attempts to use Michael Keaton to deflect from Ezra Miller's crimes. And three, hidden inside Batman's body is a unique retractable mechanism? His body? Is that supposed to be his bat umbilical cord? Although if any superhero had a hard time cutting the cord, I guess it would be Batman. One thing I love is this Gotham Globe insert that gives you his origin. In 1990, Kenner came along to improve it with the Dark Knight collection. We still have the Batman title, but we also have the movie bat symbol. Flipping it around though, and gone was the bio, and in its place a checklist of the figures and vehicles you can buy. Of the three, the DC Comics Multiverse is the most colorful and fancy. We still get the movie bat symbol, along with a much bigger picture of Keaton compared to. We're also informed that this is for the adult collector. The adult collector ages 3 and up. Instead of a bio of the character, the back features more of an overview of the figure series, but we do get that picture of Batman again, along with a few key notes. By contrast, the Toy Biz blister card is more dynamic, more informative about the character at a time when the world was being reintroduced to him, and in its way continues to inspire modern day figures. For packaging, this round goes to Toy Biz. Moving on to presentation, and Toy Biz is the tallest of the three, standing at 5 inches to the tips of the ears. Kenner peaks just over 4.5, whereas Mattel is the smallest of the three, coming to just over 4.25. Despite this promotional image showing Superpowers Batman painted black, well, Superpowers Batman with Superman's boots, the 1989 figure is a 100% new sculpt, and surprisingly faithful to the movie's design. Well, until you get to the head. To my eye, this looks more like Andy Kaufman than Michael Keaton. Now that would have been an interesting Batman movie. In Toy Biz's defense, they actually made 4 different heads during their run, and 2 of them were at a point where they didn't even have Michael Keaton's likeness. This is one of the ones that were supposed to look like Keaton. Looking at the lips though, and this one's probably the closest. This was my first Keaton Batman figure, which I have had all the way since Christmas of 1989. As for the Kenner figure, there is no doubt who this is. I'd go so far as to say this 1990 figure looks more like Michael Keaton than this 2013 one. As for the Mattel one, the likeness is still pretty good, and they actually did go in to paint in the eyes and lips. For me, it just suffers from the ears being so thick and the neck being so thin. Moving on down, and Toy Biz and Kenner have C-clip style cloth capes. The Toy Biz one is so flimsy it's completely see-through, though in its defense, the Kenner one is only moderately thicker. To me, where the Toy Biz one really shines is the sculpted on body armor. This is very accurate to what it looked like in the movie. As for Kenner, it's still a muscle suit, but unlike Toy Biz, which just advertised being Superpowers but did its own thing, the Kenner figure actually is Superpowers. They did go in and add the scallops for the mask, as well as the Burton film's more unique belt and boots. And hoo boy did Kenner get their money's worth out of that mold. Fortunately, over 20 years of hindsight gave Mattel all the reference material that they needed to make theirs perfect. The body armor is spot on, right down to that weird ugly version of the bat symbol. I'm particularly impressed with all the detail on the belt, especially compared to the Toy Biz one. For me, the highlight might just be the cape. They actually used a pleather material that's perfectly textured. It's also firm enough to kind of hold its pose if you want to do some more dynamic photography. Although I didn't have Crime Attack Batman at the time, the Kenner figures were my favorites as a kid. Even now, I appreciate the clever reuse of the Superpowers body and the Michael Keaton likeness. But in hindsight, Toy Biz deserves a lot more credit for being a 100% new sculpt and being more accurate to what we saw on screen. Yeah, they didn't exactly hit the likeness out of the gate, but they did keep trying. The only thing that's distracting about this figure is the bulky belt overlay. That said, while it does feel almost like a cheat because of how recent it is, I can't speak highly enough of this Mattel sculpt. The amount of detail is fantastic, the cape is truly impressive, and it's the only one with the correct logo. For presentation, this round goes to Mattel. Moving on to poseability, and there's some interesting distinctions between the three. From the top, and Toy Biz has a disc swivel, as does Kenner. Mattel, on the other hand, has a ball joint, but doesn't really get any up and down. Similar to the others, and all it can really do is look side to side. This is ironic though, because looking side to side is one thing that Michael Keaton absolutely could not do in the costume. Moving down, and both Toy Biz and Kenner have swivel shoulders. Despite being so old, they still work just fine. Mattel, on the other hand, has swivel hinge shoulders. He also has single-jointed hinged elbows and swivel wrists. On top of that, he has waist cut. Going back to the two older figures, and both of them can kick about 90 degrees. Conversely, Mattel can't kick that high, but his legs hinge outward. Additionally, he has thigh cut. One thing Mattel and Toy Biz have in common, though, is that both figures have single-jointed knees. Kenner, not so much. It's interesting, too, because the original Superpowers figures did have knee bends. Clearly, it was a cost-cutting measure designed to afford the lavish accessories this line was known for. In their attempt to emulate the Superpowers collection, Toy Biz gave their Batman all the necessary joints. Oddly enough, Kenner themselves didn't even do that once they got the license back. Even so, neither one can hold a candle to what Mattel did once they got a hold of it. For poseability, this round also goes to Mattel. Moving on to playability, and Mattel comes with an itty-bitty little grapnel gun. Proportionately, it might seem a bit big for him, but again, it's a small figure. It's well sculpted, and I want to give kudos to Mattel for painting the tip, but then I want to instantly take away those kudos for not also including a batarang. Then again, in Mattel's defense, Kenner didn't give him a batarang either. Despite what the package calls it, Crime Attack Batman attacks crime with this thing. In a way, it kind of reminds me of the gadget he used to save Vicky Vale from the Joker in the museum scene. Where does he get those wonderful It also has this missile. Why did someone tell me he had one of those Lastly, Toy Biz gave their Batman a grapnel gun, which as a kid kind of reminded me of a video camera. You ought to be in pictures. They also gave him a batarang with a surprise feature. Recall that the bat rope pulls out of his belt. Oh, I'm sorry, I meant body. Consulting with this instruction sheet, not instructions by the way, just instruction, you snake the batarang through the bat rope, and Batman can ride it up. So this seems needlessly complicated, and wow. Totally worth having this big bulky belt break up the sculpt. Not only that, but Toy Biz also had this Batmobile plus a Batwing that I don't have. Kenner, however, has this Batwing that I do have plus a Batmobile that I don't. He also had a bunch of other vehicles that were so rushed that they were just repaints of vehicles from other toy lines. The Batcycle came from RoboCop, the Batjet came from Silverhawks, and the Batcopter was the original Superpowers Batcopter painted black. One thing Toy Biz gave us, however, that the Dark Knight collection didn't, was the Batcave. Like many collectors who had it when it first came out, mine is missing a few pieces, but it brought me many happy hours. Not to be outdone, Kenner did give us the Batcave Command Center with the Batman Returns line. This included the front of Wayne Manor, his foyer, the Batcave, and the Penguin's Lair. Don't worry though, Kenner managed to re-release this with different stickers and colors for pretty much every Batman property for years to come. But playability is more than just accessories, vehicles, and playsets. It's also about how well your figures play with others. Since the Mattel figure is so out of scale with the others, I'm going to be covering that comparison separately. First up, and here's my other Toy Biz Batman. The paint's a bit worn out and somehow it's a bit shorter. Appearing only in the Toy Biz line, but perfectly scaled with Kenner, is Bob the Goon. For some reason, mine has a splotch of baby blue paint on his jacket. Here we have the Toy Biz version of the Joker. Just like Batman, he had multiple head sculpts, but none of them really look like Jack Nicholson. And while the heads are new, the bodies are just modified versions of the Kenner Superpowers version. Kenner also used their Superpowers Joker when making their figure. This one's likeness is closer to Nicholson though, and for some reason he has hot pink pants. Kenner also favored us with a Bruce Wayne figure whose likeness still holds up today. Because they kept the license, Kenner was also able to give us Batman Returns figures, including Catwoman, the Penguin, which looked nothing like Danny DeVito and is instead just a repaint of the Superpowers figure, and Robin, who didn't even appear in the movie. That said, if you're curious, here's Keaton with the Jim Carrey Riddler, Tommy Lee Two-Face Jones, who scales pretty well with Toy Biz, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Mr. Freeze, and Bane, who looks nothing like the movie but would be pretty at home in Todd McFarlane's new Superpower series. Speaking of superpowers, and here we have the Superpowers version of Superman, and for the Toy Biz Batman, here we have the Toy Biz Superman. Looks like McFarlane wasn't the first one to make Batman too tall. On the other extreme though is the Superpowers Flash, who might be too short, and the Toy Biz Flash is just too... It's a shame that Kenner didn't have the license to the John Wesley Ship Show. For scaling purposes, and here we have the McFarlane version of Superpowers Batman. Here's Wonder Woman, who honestly looks pretty at home with the more realistic Keaton design. And just because I thought it would be a fun design to match up with the Keaton Batman, here we have the McFarlane Batman Who Laughs. Moving over to the Mattel, and for another smaller scale Batman, here we have Arkham City, also by Mattel. Amazing how these two figures are in the same line and yet are so differently sized from each other. That said, for just a few other small scale Batman, and here we have Pocket Heroes by Mego, Battinson by Spin Master, and the more comic style also by Spin Master. For a different hero altogether, and here's the Marvel Universe Iron Man. I don't mind him being a bit taller since he is in a bulky suit of armor. And here we have the Epic Heroes Miles Morales. These two scale great. Speaking of Spider-Man, for a relative scale comparison, here are all of our Batmen with Pizza Spidey and the Spectacular Spider-Man. And as always, here they are with Stealth Iron Man. Although Mattel did give us a 3 3/4 inch Penguin and Catwoman, they weren't able to go much beyond that, and also didn't give us any vehicles. Between the three figures, the vehicles, and the Batcave, the Toy Biz collection does feel pretty complete unto itself. And lest we forget the Bat umbilical cord, but it can't compete with the wealth of product and variety that Kenner gave us between Batman and Batman Returns. For playability, this round goes to Kenner. This leaves us with nothing left to discuss but the price. I found this Batman at a toy show for only $10, but as of this recording, the only two on auction at eBay are already almost $50, and I promise that's only gonna go up. As for Toy Biz, I got this one for $30, but the going rate seems to be between $35 and $50. As for the Kenner figure, I don't remember how much I paid for it, but these days it goes for about $65. If all you want is a Kenner Batman figure and don't care about accuracy, there are other colorful options, but for price, this round goes to Toy Biz, tying him with Mattel. Nothing will ever replace the warm feelings of nostalgia that the Dark Knight collection gives me, but I've got to admit, Toy Biz held up under scrutiny way better than I expected. Even so, if you can only get one, get the Mattel. Not only is it the best sculpted and best articulated, but as we'll be discussing very soon, there are some new figures and vehicles to talk about. If you like this video, check out one of these. Thank you so much for watching. I'll be back again real soon, but until then, play nice and have fun.